So how do we keep this cash flowing? First and foremost, I will assume that you ordered a credit report before you committed to pick up, and you already have a days to pay average that meets your terms. Secondly, and this may surprise you, but you need to start with your drivers in dispatch. And why? If they don't understand what paperwork is needed and submit same, it most likely will cause a delay in payment. In TransCredit's intensive collections, we often handle freight bills 6 months and older that have gone unpaid because the driver or dispatch didn't handle the paperwork properly. All your accounts should be queried either by the sales department or by the billing department before you handle the first load as to what documents the shipper requires for prompt payment. This info should go to dispatch, and the driver should be reminded of these needs every time he picks up a load. If he doesn't adhere, I'd even suggest some penalty for failure, because we see millions of dollars that come through our collection department every year just simply because the paperwork wasn't handled properly. Part of that paperwork is the bill of lading. Understanding the bill of lading. Now, I know everyone in the room here is familiar with this document, but do you know that even though the shipper typically presents his own version thereof, that you are legally responsible for what is written on it? It's a lot more important than drivers and even dispatch seem to give it credit. It is the legal binding contract, and you should have a class for your drivers demonstrating to them what to sign and where to sign. One of the biggest mistakes we see is the driver signs the BL but fails to place your company name as the carrier of record. This is even more important when you're handling brokered loads. The driver should also look over the bill of lading for required delivery times, tarping requirements, temperature requirements on reefer loads, and this needs to be relayed back as quickly as possible to dispatch. Let's take a pause before I move on to collections. See if we have any questions regarding credit at this point. Anybody get any questions?
Anybody? No? We're still awake, no questions.
Okay. No questions? That's great. We'll move right on. So now we're going to talk about the collection end. What should I do when payment's not forthcoming? Well, Josh Billings knew what to do. Now, this was a guy that was around from 1818 to 1885. And he wrote a poem called The Kicker. And it went like this. I hate to be a kicker. And by the way, let me modernize that term. Kicker actually means complainer in today's nomenclature. So it would read, I hate to be a complainer. I always long for peace. But the wheel that does the squeaking is the one that gets the grease. So, now we all know where that old axiom came from, and you can bet it's still true today. But how do you develop a system that relentlessly but tactfully asks for the grease? It must begin with a sales attitude of encouraging the customer to pay you according to your terms. Now, this is not the time to threaten or lose it emotionally. It's not time for you to lose their business. However, it is time to institute an ongoing regimen of repeated calls to the debtor, soliciting payment until you are paid in full. It is also very important that you make regularly scheduled requests on days that the customer will be experiencing enhanced cash flow themselves, such as Monday afternoons and Tuesdays. Fridays is not a good time to call, nor on the 1st or the 15th of the month when they're trying to make payroll or pay the mortgage. The day is awfully important. They're real key. One of the things that makes our collection successful, we've learned this over the years. So when is the invoice seriously past due? When you have executed the above recommendations we just talked about, and I'll call that level 1, and the bill is still outstanding 30 days beyond your terms, you have a seriously past due invoice that requires a different type of communication. The important key here is, did you execute the first steps in the level 1 collection process? If not, it's much more difficult to move to level 2. In level 2, your goal is to get the customer to move your invoice to the top of the pile, so to speak. This may require a call from your management to theirs, or the salesperson to the traffic manager. Here is where you need a good communicator that can discuss the problems based on a review of the level 1 discussions. You can be sympathetic here, but don't lose sight of your goal, moving your invoices to the top of the pile. So when does the past due invoice become a hardline collection? Well, first, let's look at past due invoices in their true light. Recall how we started today? Any extension of credit has an inherent risk, which simply means it ain't a perfect system. In fact, you should expect a certain amount of collections as a normal way of doing business. If you don't have them, then you're probably not trying hard enough to grow your company. That said, when a past due invoice reaches 60 days past your terms, yep, it's time to get real again. These accounts should be presented to management at the end of each month, because management now has to make the call. You've expended 30 days in level 1, another 30 days in level 2. It's time to get tough, even if it means losing the account. And that's where our management has to make this call. If you wait for the bill to reach 120, 180 days old before you take action, all you have done is allow the debtor to pay others before you. By then, you may really be out of cash, and you'll lose by default anyway. Let's look at some facts in the following graph that is supported by about every collection agency on the planet. Just look at how dramatically the percentages drop as the invoice gets older. I mean, it really is amazing. And our experience here, this is not our graph, by the way, came from the Law League. But nonetheless, our experiences are about the same. I mean, you know, at 30 days past due, you're only about 93% successful. Wow, look what happens when it hits 60. You're down to 84, and if you do wait until it gets out to that 180, you know, you've got only about the 50% chance. You know what the graph says to me? It's just not good business to wait hoping you'll get paid. So what solutions are available? Just how do you get tough effectively? You do so by calling in a professional collector. But to have maximum effectiveness, they must have influence in the trucking industry and can meaningfully affect the shipper's ability to move the product to market if they don't pay you first. Here's what I mean. Choices. Choose an attorney. Probably the worst choice you can make. I'm not attorney bashing here. It's just that they're not going to put much effort, particularly into smaller invoice amounts. And they lack the ability to affect the shipper's credit. Choose an off-the-shelf collection agency. Most do a good job. But outside of TransCredit or D&B, they lack the ability to affect the shipper's credit. And even with D&B, if transportation is a small portion of the shipper's overall debt, it may not show up adversely. So I'll pause again for a moment to give you an opportunity if anyone has any questions at this time.
Questions? We're just bringing you back on here, Winston. There you go. For a second. There you go. You're back live. Well, kind of. Are you there, Winston?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. We're good to go.
All right. All right. Here we go. Any questions? Yeah, there were no questions, I believe. So here we go. All right. And move on to the arrow type thing at this point. We've covered a lot of ground today, focusing on credit extension and collections. What I'd like to do in summary is introduce you to some of the tools that are available to assist you. First up is a shot of our website at transcredit.com, where you can learn in more detail just how we can service you best. We produce a credit report that is second to none. Compare the Premier report with what you're currently using. It includes full corporate data, including sales revenues, collection activities. We have descriptive graphs outlining historical credit scores versus the industry, and a historic payment trend versus the industry, and accounts receivable values from other carriers. By the way, TransCredit moved its database to the clouds last year, and now all reports are updated in real time within about 5 seconds after we filter the data. So you're really guaranteed about getting prompt and up-to-date information. You can also purchase our auto alert system that notifies you of any adverse changes in any report that you order. As you can see on screen, we do two things. Number one, if we see a movement in credit score of 3 points or more, or a payment trend of goes up 3 points or more, you're automatically alerted by email. Or for larger firms, we also have data transfer files that we can provide you. You can then review the report detail from your online portfolio at no additional cost. And this is really pretty cool. If you can see this on screen, you not only get the name of the report that you ordered, when you ordered it, and when you last viewed it. So now your accounts receivable manager can look at files and see the last time that someone actually went out and checked it. And then you can view that, if you notice, at no additional charge.